to the cloud. It's 4 o'clock, everybody. Welcome to Boroughs and Burbs. This is episode 78. I'm going to hit my fancy share screen and show you that this is Talking New York. We've got Vince Rocco on. He's with us, and hopefully some of his 40,000 listeners find us here today. He does a weekly podcast, has been doing it for most of a decade. Today, we get to turn the tables and interview Vince on what it means to be a successful podcaster on real estate in New York. The show was called Good Morning New York with Vince Rocco. Now he's taken a 2-year hiatus. Now the show is called Talking New York Real Estate. And now I'll stop talking, turn the mic over to Vince and say, welcome. We're very happy to have you on the show. And I understand the first thing I want to hear about is, how did you come to meet Roberto 17 years ago? And what's that been like?
21 years ago.
21. You guys are old.
We're old. I'm old. He's not. But thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. And I really was looking forward to it. But I did want to show Roberto this because I think we talked about it a while ago. He remembers this very well. I used to watch American Idol like it was, the only television show on television. And I was addicted for years and years and years. I haven't seen the show in 10 years or more, whatever, but I still remember those days. I used to blog about it in our internal office email, and I get so passionate about it. And I guess I think about it sometimes, maybe that's the start of where, all this need to deliver content or broadcast something. Maybe that's where it started.
So that's an interesting question because it's a real estate podcast. So do you do it? Do you give the people what they want, or are you trying to just fill dead air?
Dead air. That's we'll talk about that in a bit. But listen, I do try and give people what they want. The topic of New York City real estate is so gigantic. It really includes the entire metropolitan area, including Long Island at times, Connecticut at times, New Jersey at times, and of course all the boroughs of New York City. Said to me through the years, don't you run out of things to talk about? And I say, it's New York City, it's real estate. How could you possibly run out of things to talk about? So the answer to that is no, we never do. We enhance as we go along. We've done topics many, many, many times over the 8 years, but I mean, different spin, different guests, different panel members. I'm hoping that I am giving people what they want, because what I've learned through the years is New York City real estate is a pastime around the world. Everybody, anywhere you go, is fascinated with New York City real estate. So, the fact that my show has a global audience, people in countries I've never even heard of listen to the show. That reason and that reason only, because they are fascinated with a $250 million penthouse that just sold, or $500 million, whatever that is listed on the marketplace. See or hear these numbers. So people pay attention, and people, I guess, want as much as we can give them. It's a struggle. As I was telling you, John, before we started the show, it's Thursday afternoon, and my Thursday afternoons are dedicated to next Tuesday's show every week. I sit here in my home office, and I sit here for a few hours, and I already have the show booked, but I have to come up with content. I have to come up with questions. I have to come up with prep material for people, and it takes a village.
So for all us country mice in the room who look at it from the outside in, when you talk about New York real estate and everybody's fascinated with New York real estate, isn't that like just a dozen billionaires who own all these big buildings and 60-70% of everybody rents from them?
There's a possibility that that's probably 85% true, but the other 15% I think is because of the way we transact business here in New York City. Unlike any other place in the world, unlike any other place in the state of New York or the tri-state area, the way we transact business here in New York is so different than anywhere else that it's fascinating in itself. It's complicated. It's hair pulling. I mean, I'm just going through a deal at the moment. It's like when if I'm not screaming and yelling, I'm wanting to throw myself into the vodka bottle.
That is
excruciating.
That is so true about you. The transaction here is so unique. When I was being licensed in 1998, the guy in the class would say, and this holds true everywhere in the country except for in New York. And then they would say, and this holds true everywhere in New York except for in Manhattan. So it's a very, very small place that just runs and it has its own speed. I mean, you can tell someone who's not from here just by walking on the street. She's like, you're not walking at the right speed. You're in the way. You're clogging the system. So, you know what I mean? But so can we just rewind just a little bit for just about how he started this? Because he did have this incredible blog when we were in the office about American Idol, and he would review every single performance, and it was meticulous and it was amazing. And I remember going to Vince and saying, that's really good. Like, you should, you could do something with this. Like, your voice is really valuable. And he says, you know what? I love that. I love that whole broadcasting, this and that. And then by chance, as you explained to us yesterday, your first podcast, you were approached to do it. You were approached, and I also, you have a teaching background.
I do, yeah.
So after the first incarnation of it ended, you did have a desire to come back somehow and do it again. But I think it's just knowing you, it seems like it's part of your desire also to teach a little bit about what we're doing in New York that also brought you back. Am I wrong in that?
And Vince, lean forward, because I think I'm getting too much echo. Lean forward. I want to hear you better and see you better.
The man behind the mic.
And so here's the thing, Roberto, you nailed it. You're 100% correct. I am one person who says all the time, I'm always late to the dance, okay? I'm always the last one at the dance. And so what does that mean or translate into how my career went? I studied teaching and I studied broadcasting in college, all right? I taught for about 7 or 8 months after I graduated, and I realized, you know what, this is really not for me. It takes too much. These kids are driving me crazy, whatever. Off to corporate America I went. Never did anything in broadcasting, all right? So fast forward, I don't even want to tell you how many years later, the phone rings, and I told you guys this the other day, and someone recruited me to do the first live internet radio show / podcast called Good Morning New York Real Estate. And I said to the guy on the phone, I said, I don't even know what a podcast is. What are you talking about? He says, do you listen to radio? I said, of course I listen to radio. He said, well, it's the same thing, only you can download, you can listen to it. And if you miss it live, it's going to be available later on in a download fashion. And I thought, okay, don't be too stupid. What does he mean by download? It's like, come on now, I don't understand this stuff. Anyway, long story short, we did it. And it took, I think I had a 13-week contract, and it took off and it started doing really, really well. So of course I got another contract, and 7 years or 8 years later, Good Morning America was a huge success around the globe, and that's one of the things that makes me feel good, because it's something that I think John asked before. Listen, because maybe we are giving them what they want to hear. I really haven't put my finger on it. The other thing too is, late to the dance, I graduated college as a teacher, and 5 years ago I was asked to teach continuing ed for license renewal at New York Real Estate Institute. So here I am, all these years after my teaching license. Now I'm a certified licensed instructor at NYREI, teaching continuing ed, which I've got a bunch of classes coming up next week. So late to the dance, but that's how the broadcasting started. And now, after a 2-year absence, we're back because people kept saying, when are you coming back? We really like the show and we want it back again. So, kind of dragging my feet thinking, I shut it down because I needed a break. It was COVID, we couldn't do it anyway. And I said, okay, let's go back. And here we are about 7 or 8 months later. And the show so far is tracking really, really well, and it's really well received. I mean, I just say thank you to everybody who listens, because it's a lot of work.
So let's talk about what it is, because I think it is quite a bit different from what Roberto and I are doing. We're doing a conversation, totally spontaneous, nothing is scripted, and we're doing it on video. and he and I have no idea where the conversation will take us. When I listen to your program, it's a little bit of news, there's a little bit of conversation, and there's a panel with you in the studio. And that's another key difference. You're in the studio physically with your panelists, your experts, but there's no video. So talk to me about that dynamic, what it is, and why you've chosen to do it that way.
Okay, first of all, video coming soon. And maybe not every episode, but video coming soon. I mean, I think that's just the likely progression from, you know, where the show started to where we are today. Yeah, I script the show probably with way too much content, because I'm one of these people that I guess I learned how to write in school, and I have to have enough content. So, and when I prep my guests before the show, I always say, listen, in no particular order, but this is what we're going to talk about. Here's the topic. Here are some questions. I might move around and do a lot of things. I might have follow-up questions based on something someone says. So we go off script, but I have to have my content and my script in front of me. So if I need it, it's there. A lot of it is, you know, I read through it a couple of times before we go to air. It's kind of like in my head anyway, so I don't have to really read the questions. I really kind of know what they are. But it's also good when I'm finding out for the guests to be prepared as much as they can be. And again, I tell them, you know, nothing is written in stone here. If you have something to add to this, please do. I write a lot, and that's what I do on Thursday afternoons. And I just completed it before I put into this broadcast. So, you know, I'll review it later on, see if I need to make changes and go from there. We do it in a studio, and we've always done it in a studio, a bona fide radio studio, and now a podcast studio. Lights, you know, whatever, all over the place, professional mics, an engineer that's dedicated to the show. I have a producer, you know, who sits in the United Kingdom, believe it or not, tells me, you know, gives me the best advice in the world. This is great. This is, you know, change this up or whatever. I feel like I run this like a news show. John, you said before, it starts out with, you know, the opening of the show. I go through a lot of news items, anything that's new in New York City, anything that's happened in New York City, new regulations, whether they're governmental regulations that affect the housing market, or just a celebrity buying a $40 million, you know, penthouse somewhere. So I always open up with news. Then I go to introduce who's on the show, and then we go through the show, question and answer, talk show kind of thing. So it's a little bit of news, it's a little bit of talk show, and it's a lot of entertainment because we all get along. And I know so many agents who, you know, work in our industry that come on to the show. We already have a working knowledge as to who we are. We've met before, we've shown before, we've done deals before. And I have a regular panel that shows up most weeks. I mean, everybody's busy, so they're not on every week. So the show works from three levels: news, you know, talk show, content, and then entertainment in a studio, 1 hour, and we go from there. And it's like I walked out of the studio on Tuesday, 2 days ago, and here I am yesterday starting to fuss with, oh God, next week is right around the corner. What are we doing next week? I mean, I had a working something or other in my mind as to what the topic was, but now get to work. So you finish one show and you go right to the next. So it's a big production, but I feel like I have to have a big production around me in order for me to do what I like to think I can do well. I'm sure there's many people better than me, but I think I can do it well, and I need to have that production around me to, you know, make sure that I do it right.
Let me ask you this. I always have this metaphor in my head of Bill Maher's show with you, just because he had politically incorrect, and then it went off, and then he came back with, you know, real time. And you had a show, you did it. It was a format. It was extremely successful. And because of COVID, it kind of disappeared and shut down because of innumerable reasons. When you decided and when you kind of reimagined it coming back, what did you want to change? What were things you like, this time I want to do this, or I want to take it a little bit more in this direction? Were there certain, or were you like, you know what, I just need to replicate it under a different name? Like, how did you approach that?
the above, yes, I wanted to change the name because even though I own all the content from Good Morning New York over at the Voice America Network, I mean, they really can't do much with those 350 shows. They're my shows, I own them, but I just felt I needed to make a name change if I was going to another, venue in the podcast world. So we went from Good Morning New York Real Estate to Talking New York Real Estate. Basically the same format. The only thing I really wanted to change was I didn't necessarily want to have the same panel members week after week after week, like I did with the first show, kind of like depending on them, because after all, look, I was learning how to do this. Now, like I said, they show up when they can, but it's okay because I think I personally have the format down, but we're just opening it up to a lot more topics. We're bringing in agents from companies that are large and small. For example, next week's show, I'm going to be talking about how the boutique real estate firms are coming back again, and they're very popular, and they're all over the place. And there's a bunch of names out there that that I could rattle off, and you've all heard of them, or maybe you haven't, but they're all making a big smash out there. So we're going to talk about that. But in the meantime, I'm bringing on agents from some of these smaller firms, not just the bigger firms that we're all used to working for and with. So not much of a change, just I think in the way I've tightened up the format. I'm very conscious, or I try to be, of dead air. I can't deal with dead air. So I've moved the pace of the strike. I think the biggest change from one show to this new show is the pace at which we roll for that hour. In fact, everybody around the table says at the end of that hour after I sign off, wow, that went by really quickly. And I agree, because I move from topic to topic, and sometimes we have lots of stuff to talk about, and we just go and go and go and go. And I think that's the biggest change we've made versus just kind of lingering and whatever.
I want to go deeper on what you just said, the change in New York. I mean, we'll come back to your show, but I want to come back to you as a New York expert. Nobody has their hand on the pulse of New York real estate like a weekly news radio host. When you say New York is moving back in trending toward boutique agencies, can you talk a little bit more about that trend and name some names, if you will?
Well, listen,
Who's exciting?
Well, listen, the bigger firms that we're all associated with, or most of us are, they're not going anywhere. They never did. I can tell a story back to 2012, and Roberto probably remembers this. Well, I actually left Halstead, where I started my career, and I went off to start a very small boutique firm with 5 other partners. And everybody yelled at me. Everybody told me I was out of my mind. You're doing so great here. You're just at the start of your career. Whatever. Why would you do this? And why would you go to an unnamed firm and think you're going to do what you're doing here or better? Well, I proved them wrong. What I realized after starting, first of all, starting a firm, managing agents and doing all that stuff is another take a village situation. But my business didn't suffer. My business grew. My business grew tremendously because it just did. And it wasn't necessarily a sign of the times. I went from, 6 agents when I first signed on to that new company to, I think, 68 or 69 after 2 or 3 years. And then we kept going from there before, we all left, and that was another whole story. But we were doing really well. And it was because the pulse of the marketplace then was the smaller companies needed to start up, needed to grow, the Wall Street darlings. I mean, we were written up in every magazine and every periodical you could imagine, how fast we were growing. Our revenue from year to year was off the charts. My personal business, when I had time for it, was better than it was, former years at Halstead. So what I have seen, then I came back to Halstead, now Brown Harris. I don't even remember, 2015, 2016. So I'm back a long time already. Bottom line is, what I've seen from those days, the boutique days, to back to the big company days, and now sort of going back to the boutique days, is people out there want to work with you, the agent. It doesn't matter who you work for. If I'm a seller, if I'm a buyer, I don't care what your company name is. I really don't.
But that's never changed. Now Now more than ever, the big firms are saying you need technology, you need a worldwide network, you need the tools that only a big firm can bring.
But
And
so do-
therefore, are they missing something? Is the
But-
market responding to that or not?
No, I mean, look. Technology, technology is not helping me find buyers and sellers, and technology is not helping me close buyers and sellers. That's me. Now, look, when I first started in this business, we didn't have anything. We didn't even have a website. I think Corcoran was the first company that came with a website. Halstead followed right behind. I don't need technology to help me do my job. I don't need it. I use it. Why not? It's there. It's in front of me. By the way, that's the mantra of the larger firms these days, but also the smaller boutique firms right now that are starting up with the same thing. You need technology, you need this, you need now, I read something either this morning or yesterday about how artificial intelligence is going to change the world of real estate along with changing the world of so many other industries. So what? Who cares with artificial intelligence? My famous hashtag on social media is, so what? Who cares? Just what you got to do. That's not going to sway me to come work for you, big company or small company. I'm going to still do what I do because it's all about relationships. Technology hogwash. There are other fruit over technology. It's like, okay, big deal. Next.
Wait. Hogwash. You rely on social media. I rely on social media and technology to make a bigger brand than I would otherwise.
Well, that's different.
But
Now,
are you doing that internally or are you doing that through your company?
I'm doing that internally. You're right, but I am leveraging technology. And when a big company says to me, we can help you with technology and reach, that resonates to an agent. That's why the big companies are doing, are growing.
No, it does, but here's the thing. I kind of separate social media from the technology bucket as we've known it and watched it grow, CRMs and listing systems and, all of email systems. Listen, I worked back at IBM, way back in the 80s when email didn't even exist. So you can just imagine where my head goes, and watching my evolution through the years. Social media to me is marketing. Social media to me is branding. And I say to people all the time when I'm teaching real estate classes on my show every week, you need to brand yourself. Your company isn't going to do this. You work for companies, yes, but you need to brand yourself as a person, as an individual and an agent to get your likeness out there and to get people to respond to it. Yeah, it's technology, but it's not the technology that the companies are recruiting. The technology words they're using really don't matter. My company doesn't help me with social media. They could care less. That's up to me. That has replaced, I will tell you, that has replaced my ad budget. I mean, I still get an ad budget, but ask me the last time I used $1 for my ad budget other than apartment photography, right? That's it. That is what I use it for. They're not paying for my marketing of me. You want to give a show sheet to people, they don't want it. Where do they find it? They find it on their laptop or their iPad or their phone. These are the things we talk about. I'm talking New York real estate, how we've progressed. And of course, technology, none of us want to see it go away. But I'm here to tell you, from my experience, it's not what people make it out to be.
What I hear you saying, and this is fascinating me. So you're rocking my world here. What you're saying is that if I need a realtor, I should go look for somebody who hustles, an individual who hustles. And I'm just as likely to find a hustler, an independent thinker at a small boutique as I am at a large one. That's interesting.
Listen, I'm not pushing boutiques. I'm just saying that is the topic of our show next week. I've been there. Okay. I had my own small boutique. I'm not saying there's anything about, I'm working for a large company look, I work for Brown Harris. It's a very big company, 150 years old. We just celebrated a birthday, 150 years. I have no issues with that. I'm just saying that we are our own person. I proved that when I opened my own firm because people did, I had a client after 3 years at my new firm who we were on the phone one day, and I forgot, well, she wanted me to list her apartment, and I said, did you see my email? She said, yeah. She asked me a question, and I said, you don't realize that I don't work at Halstead anymore? She said, no, I see your name in my inbox. I read your note and that's the end. I said, but my signature block says my new company. She said, I don't go there. Vince Rocco, that's all I need to see. That's the point.
Well, I
Anyway.
think a little bit of what he's kind of saying is that in recruiting and things, it's almost like a building. You go to a new building, the building has a rooftop, it has a pool, it has all these things. Everybody's like, oh my God, but this building has this, that, and the other. And it almost gets oversold because it's an amenity that the people end up never using. And then you sell their apartment 10 years later, he's like, how was the pool? How was the roof? They're like, oh, I've been there like twice. You know, it's like, it's oversold. What the nitty gritty of you living in that building is that apartment. It's like the nitty gritty of working with you is you. It's not your company.
It is. And I work in a building that I've been working in for one of the buildings I work in. I sold from floor plans way back whenever. And 15 years later, you know, I'm still in there for all the resales, all the rentals. It's a condominium building in Midtown West. And I tease people, you know, who I sold to, and they say, I have to have a gym, I have to have a rooftop, I need this, I need that. And I bump into them on a regular basis because I'm in that building 7 times a week. And I say, so have you been to the gym lately? Because, you know, I like to just give them a little tweak. And they say, oh, I don't have time for the gym. But did you tell me you had to have a gym in the building? What about the rooftop? When was the last time you went upstairs and barbecued a steak? No, I don't have time to do that. But you needed a rooftop. For what? So what I say to people when they ask me these things, I say, it's good for resale. So you may not use it, but the building is fully amenitized. It's great for resale because everybody, even when I sell brand new development, which I still do, everybody wants every amenity that you could throw at it. Whether you use it or not is not even the point. You'll play it up. Your agent will play it up when it's time to resell that unit, and it works. It works like 100% of the time.
That's the metaphor of the big company, John.
Yeah.
How is the market now for all of us who are not in the market and aren't seeing the level of deal flow, the changes in prices? Where do you see it now? Because you're in the market with half a dozen experts every week, and the energy is changing since the pandemic. I remember during the pandemic, the word was New York's coming back. New York's coming back. Is it back? Is it getting better? Is it getting better fast enough? How's the market?
Listen, in my opinion, it never went anywhere. Okay, we hit the pause button, and you know, I've been in this business for 21 years, coming up next month, and I remember the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs. And you know, we used to yell and scream about, you know, the New York Times writing a really bad article about real estate, and what happened? The buyers ran home, they locked themselves in their rooms, and they didn't open the door. They didn't do anything until the market changed. What happened? How did the market change? No one knows. Somebody flipped the switch. It became a seller's market. Now these buyers running down the street with their hair on fire, can't buy fast enough, and are getting stuck in bidding wars and over asking prices and da. Why? Because I'm afraid it's going to go even higher.
So it's good getting better.
It's getting better, but it never really, my point is, it never really went anywhere. We have our ebbs and flows. It was flat for a year, okay? Flat doesn't mean disaster. Flat just means less deals happening, but sellers still have to sell at some point. Buyers still have to buy at some point. So I'm seeing now, look what happened at the end of 21 into 22. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a market. I sold a brand new development in 6 weeks, 6 weeks, full price, no concessions. In 21, because New Yorkers can't stop. You know, New Yorkers build up and build up and build up to the point where they say, okay, now it's time. I got to get out there, and I didn't do anything for a year, 2 years, saved a lot of money. I got to do it. Brand new development sold in maybe 7 weeks. The developer was, you know, out of his mind. Our development division was out of their mind. How did this happen? I don't know. People just like what we were selling. Who knows? The market fluctuates. It doesn't really, it's uncertain sometimes. And I think we're coming out of an uncertain market. I don't think that we are heading in any bad direction. I mean, interest rates are interest rates, but that'll level off at some point this year. 4.5% is my prediction by the fall of this year. To normal levels, by the way. 4.5%, guys, normal levels.
Where are you getting 4.5? I'm hearing 5.5 from the big banks.
I predict 4.5. I don't know.
You heard
That's
it here
just my-
first. Vince says so.
I did.
New York Times is breaking with that tomorrow, I hear.
Listen, and if I'm on the byline, that's even better.
I think, all right, so here's let's talk interest rates. In my world, where less than 2% of the housing stock is co-op, everything is far more interest rate dependent out here in the suburbs. In New York, where I believe most of the housing is rented, and of what's left, tell me if I'm wrong, 2/3 of it is co-op and 1/3 is condo. Is that right?
Yeah. Give or
So
take.
the co-op people, they all have to show that they're sitting on plenty of cash anyway. So are they less interest rate dependent, generally speaking, in New York, because you have so many more co-ops?
I think you're talking about, really, when you peel back the envelope there, I think you're talking about the price point. And so what we see is there's still a lot of cash deals. I just did a deal on a co-op, I'm hoping that the contract gets signed today. All cash at $2 million. It doesn't matter whether it's a co-op or a condo, it matters price point, and it matters, the buyer, where they're coming from. I mean, I've seen financing in both condos and co-ops. So interest rate matters more to the first-time buyer, I think, than it does to somebody who's buying for second or third time, or an empty nester, or, a pied-à-terre buyer, because they don't have to buy, they buy because they can. The first-time buyer, look, last year, a lot of first-time buyers said to me, listen, we were out there looking when the rates were still at, 2.5, 2.93%. I could afford the monthly. What we have to remember is first-time buyers are very monthly payment driven. What are the common charges or maintenance, and what are the taxes if it's a condo? If I could afford the monthlies, the mortgages could be okay. Now you go from 2.93% to 6.5%. What does that do? That automatically doubles their mortgage payment. So now the monthly calculation puts them way out of the box to be qualified by a bank or a board to purchase. So even if they wanted to, they couldn't. So that's how the interest rate really affected first-time buyers. Now it's kind of coming down again. It's the first of the year, and some of the Wall Streeters and the financial people got bonuses. If they got bonuses, whatever. So I see that there's a little bit of an uptick, and a lot of the apartments I still sell are to first-time buyers. I mean, even though they're $1 million plus, they're still considered first-time buyers. I see it moving or trending. I like the word trend better, in positive direction. I don't see any flat sticking around for too much longer.
It's almost a blessing in disguise to start your search. Like if you were just starting now, because if you started a year ago and you had calculated what your money would buy, and now you feel completely demoralized, depressed, and everything you looked at before you can't afford. Now, if you start, what the perspective is right off the bat. No one's going to take that away from you. If anything, it might get a slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
How about all
Correct.
those people who are listening to Vince thinking that if interest rates are going to go down to 4.5, I think I'll wait till the end of the year.
So's everybody else. And I always say
Yeah.
the most difficult thing in New York to get in, it's not the price, it's the competition. So right now it's lighter. It's an opportunity to get in. When everybody comes in, that's when you're never going to win that bidding war.
Well, that's the thing, when you sit around and wait, and when everybody then starts popping up, now you see open house. Look what happened last year in the rental business. So I told you before, I have this condo that I work in for 15 years. A couple of rentals last year in 2022. I've never seen rental open, and I don't do open houses for rentals really, but I've never seen volume. I mean, 17 people in the apartment at one point, the doorman's holding 25 other people in the lobby waiting to come in. And I thought, okay, this is like, whoa, this should be a sale. People paying over rental asking prices, smaller apartments, larger apartments. I mean, I did something in Brooklyn Heights for $12,900 per month. I mean, a 2-bedroom apartment, And the amount of people that showed up for this was insane. When they want to, they do it. When they don't want to, because of, you know, what they read or hear about, or the press carries on about, they just pause. John, like you said before, you know, is New York back? New York never went anywhere. Everybody just went to sleep for a little bit. No one ran out of town and no one ran back into town. They just took their time and waited for, you know, we're a city that works on buzz. Okay, when the buzz is out there, watch out.
Well, I'm going to
Hopefully
tell
you'll
you
see-
that the spring market in Connecticut is frantic. I have a
Yes.
client who bid on like you said, starter home. It's a couple, no kids. They're looking at a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. That whole category in Connecticut is crazy. They bid over asking, and they were not in the top 5 out of 19 offers on the first weekend. And we just called Michelle across town and we said, so what happened this weekend on your open house? And she said, I wish I had 24 more of that. And in this case, it's at the $2 million level, $1.5 million to $3 million range in New Canaan or Darien or Westport or Greenwich. We have no inventory. A town like Darien, which typically has 250 houses on the market at the height of the spring market, has 26 single family homes, 10% of what they should. So when I say, how's the market in New York? And you say, it's good and getting better. Let me just contrast that with, compared to some of the crazy markets around the country, New York is just, what, sane? It's still sane. I can still get a decent deal in New York.
Yes. But just to go back to what you said, Westchester County is also experiencing the same thing. My sister has been looking up there for 2 years. One of these buyers who, well, I don't know, you know, the price is going to go down. Maybe I should wait. Okay, you waited. Now they're up $250,000 from where you started. Okay. Now she says, well, but I think I'm going to be priced out of the market. Well, you know what, sister? Either you pull the lever now and you do something, or you don't, because you're not going to, because that 250 is going to turn into 300 and 3.25 and 350. So yeah, you can still get a deal in New York City, but you know what? You can always get, but it depends on how you define deal. You can always find something in New York City that meets your requirements, that meets your, you know, budget, that puts you in the neighborhood you want it. You just have to have patience to get out there and look for it. You know, everybody says New York City is always priced so high. It's priced, it prices people out of the box. Guess what? Last time I noticed, everybody in New York City has lots of money. Okay?
I love that.
They could afford it. I mean, come on now.
I think the New York Times ought to include that on tomorrow's story.
Under my byline. I'm telling you, it's, you know, I went to the grocery store the other day, one little bag, okay? One little bag. And one little bag was $68. And I thought to myself, as I'm walking out of the store, a bodega, okay? What the hell did I just buy for $68?
Not an apartment.
Not an apartment, but it's like, come on now, we're going to fuss about the price of an apartment in New York City? Yeah.
So what do you think prices are doing on at the $1 million to $3 million level in Manhattan? Are they appreciating at 5% per year, 10%? Or are they just holding steady?
You know, I think I don't like to put a percentage on stuff because it's always such a moving target, and it also depends on the neighborhood, the borough, you know, wherever it might be.
Upper East Side, Upper West Side. Come on, I'm going to pin you down.
Upper West Side, probably a little higher. Upper West Side, maybe 3 to 4%, 5 if you stretch it to that. But again, it depends on the building. It depends on the apartment.
Yeah,
it depends on the street. You know, goes back to, and Roberto can back me up on this or better. You know, it depends. Look, years ago when I first started in this business, we had one market. Okay, the New York City real estate market. When we talk about markets today, and I'm very careful when I'm on my show talking about markets, we don't have a market any longer. We have multiple markets. Every borough is a market. Every neighborhood within a borough is a market. And in some neighborhoods, certain streets are its own market. Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue, Central
Even a
Park West.
building, even a building can be its own micro market.
And even a building. So you can't really pinpoint saying, in general, the Upper West Side is seeing appreciation of 3, 4, 5%. Yeah, and maybe in some cases more, and some cases less, because, and I'm not so sure that it's a good thing, how this is morphed, from one market to multiple markets. And we just kind of go on the comps in a building to see what that appreciation has. Look, I've seen up to 10% a year ago, based on what, people paid way back, whatever. Year of the flood, as my grandmother used to say.
All right, let's get back to podcasting. As one of the most successful podcasters in New York, and certainly I put out on the invitation that the 25% of all podcasts in the universe quit after one show. And I think it's something like 50% only make it to 10 episodes. So after doing 7 years of this and having a huge following of 40,000 people every week at the peak, tell us about how it made you rich and famous.
From your lips to God's ears. The other statistic you didn't mention, which I really thought was great, 26% or 80 million Americans listen to podcasts weekly. I didn't think that number was that high. And that's based on my own ignorance when I got recruited.
They're all watching Joe Rogan. It's just all Joe Rogan. He's sucking all the oxygen out of the room.
Maybe so, but bottom line is, to me, that's an unbelievable number, because when I was recruited, I had to look up the word podcast. I felt like an idiot. Look, it was a slow burn. My brother was the first listener on first show, audience of one. Who the hell knew of Vince Rocco? Who knew about Good Morning New York? No one knew about the show. It just premiered one day and that was it. My brother listened to it. One person, it was my brother, Michael. That grew over the years to, as you keep saying, 40 to 45,000. It would fluctuate every week, whatever. Listeners around the globe. And I used to sit there thinking, all right, how can I monetize this? How can I turn this into, something that's going to put money in my pocket? Because this is now getting to the point where these numbers are outrageous. I mean, totally outrageous. But I also started at a time when there were not very many podcasts, number one. And number two, there were no New York City podcasts and New York City real estate podcasts. So it hit at the right time. Chalk it up to timing. But then I started thinking, after the monetizing thoughts I was having, I started thinking, I didn't start this to make money. I didn't start this to turn it into, a return on investment. I started this because of my love for broadcasting, my love for writing, and my love for real estate. And when I put all that together and I can put it into a venue where I have people that want to listen to it every week, it's like, okay, I get to do the podcast, the broadcasting that I like. And by the way, the first 7 years were live. It was a live show in and out of commercials, which I had to learn how to do. I'm being satisfied because I'm broadcasting. Okay, I'm making money doing my real estate deals. I didn't even kind of think about,
Does this help? Does it help or does it hurt it?
Does
broadcasting help your regular career? Because some of us will say, I don't need to make money on podcasting, but if it helps my day job, I think I'd do it. I think I'm a good writer. I like to talk. I like to broadcast. I think I'll start a podcast to help my day, my regular job. Does it?
Oh, okay. So hold on a minute. The answer to your question, it does and it doesn't help. But here's my response to, I think I should start a podcast, blah, blah. I teach continuing ed. Right next door to me is the new sales class, okay? And there are hundreds of students in that class. I mean, I don't even understand where these people come from. I want to be a real estate agent. So when they come to talk to me on a break because they see me sitting in the classroom and I'm on a break with my students, they'll start picking my brain about this and about that. Of course, they're all looking for, a team to join or that's going to hire them. And they say to me all the time, what kind of advice do you give me? And I look at them straight in the eye, and I've been saying this all of my career. And this is what I mean about podcasting too. if you want to do a podcast, I don't care what the topic is. And I tell the real estate students the same thing. Do you have a fire in your belly? Do you want to do this? Is this a total 100% passion of yours that's going to make you feel fulfilled? It's going to keep you focused. And with the fulfillment and the focus, you're going to get out there and drive your own success. If you tell me you have that drive in your belly to do this, then do it. But if you can't tell me that, step out.
Can I just
Because
tell
what
you
is
that
that?
what?
Go ahead.
Can I just tell you that when I looked around at all of New York and all the realtors in New York, I found Roberto Cabrera and I read his market reports and I said, this is a guy who has a lot to say. I think he's got some fire in the belly. This guy has a lot to say. And maybe I should ask him. So he's not the best, maybe not the smartest guy, maybe not the best looking, but clearly had a lot to say. And so I asked him, and here we are 3 years later.
It took some convincing.
But he has that skill. Okay. He always had, from the day I met him, he had the fire in his belly. He was aggressive. He was focused. He was a damn good writer and still is. His videos, if you haven't looked at his videos, for heaven's sakes, I mean, come on now. You know, this is what I'm saying. You have to do this well, or don't do, just step aside. If, you know, I say sometimes, so many people make my head hurt, okay? And they make my head hurt because they're in the wrong place and they want to do it, they want to do it, they want to do it, but they can't. Just step aside and let somebody else do it. Do something else that you can be really passionate about. This podcasting is very hard. Real estate transactions are very hard. You got to have a thick skin. You think I look like this on purpose? 20 years of this, I might have turned out differently. Who knows?
Roberto, do you still have the fire? Any reflections on
I just
podcasting?
I don't have the artistry like you guys have for the to host. Like as I said, I'm your Ed McMahon. You know, like, you know,
Second banana.
that's good. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I need Roberto to go, hey, wait a minute, like every 10 minutes to go, hey, wait a minute, wait, you know, and like throw the bullshit flag.
Look,
and I have to.
It's like anything else, you know. I don't care what your job, you know, your job discipline is, whatever. I mean, even when I'm teaching school, look, it takes a lot to stand up in front of, you know, experienced agents and to get a point across, or to make a point, or to even just run a class. So you have to like what you're doing, and you have to see. I think people do it for all the wrong reasons. When I was running my little company at Blue all those years, I would be recruiting and I'd have brand new agents come in and sit down in front of me, and I would laugh out loud most of the time, because all they kept saying to me was, so if I decide to take a job here, we'll start with that. Does that mean I get an expense account? Does that mean I get car service? Does that mean I get to have all of these parties? And I'm like, you are watching too much reality television, okay? Because I'm here to tell you that ain't the way it is. And here, I own this company and I pay for my own car service out of my own pocket, and I don't get an expense account. And if I want a party, either my developer pays for it or we don't have one. And they were like stunned. So these are people who were looking at a profession that was all wrong for them, because they were looking at it for all the wrong reasons. Those who didn't ask those questions and approach the interview differently, those are the ones who got the job. And those are the ones who succeeded. Most of them.
Talk to me about Voice America affiliating with a big company, getting a producer. Was that a good idea for you as a young podcaster? Is it a good idea for me, an old podcaster? When does it make sense?
First of all, you know, nods to Voice America. They gave me what I have. They put me where I am, and they were amazing to work with and for. Very hands-off, but right there if you need them. I had an executive producer. I had a producer. I had a dedicated engineer.
Were they assigned by? Were those people assigned by them to you?
Yes. They were out of Phoenix, Arizona. So my weekly, 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning engineer was out in Arizona, and I think they're 2 hours behind us, so it was really early for him. I learned everything there is about podcasting through them. First of all, they packaged everything. All I needed to do was show up on Tuesday mornings at 9 o'clock with my content and do the show. But they packaged the theme, they packaged they cleaned it up before it went to podcast if there was a faux pas, during the live broadcast. They have a wide stretch of listeners around the world. And part of the reason why I grew to, and by the way, I remember in the last couple of months of podcasting there or live radio there, my producer called me one day and said, you're in the top 1% of all podcasts around the world. And of course, I sat there thinking, well, what does that mean? He said, well, do you look at your numbers? I said, I look at them every week when you send me the ratings. He said, well, there are not that many podcasts, even here at Voice America, that have those kinds of numbers. You're in the top 1% around the world. I mean, God knows where I'd fall today, and certainly with the new show, I'm nowhere near that. Bottom line is they got me ready for where I am today, experience-wise, and going out on my own. Now, will I return to a network like Voice America someday? Sure, maybe. They are a lot more expensive. So I decided upon our return, let's start out this way, and maybe we'll grow back to, because I had sponsors there too, based on the numbers, it didn't cost me anything.
So can I ask you something about that? So kind of as a metaphor with the boutique agent, larger agent, what John was kind of saying, were you able to grow to that size because of the infrastructure and the reach they already had that you kind of piggybacked on, and you kind of ran all over their playground to spread your voice, whereas now or to do this on your own, much more difficult?
Absolutely, 100% yes. Their infrastructure, their wide network around the world. I mean, I said to you guys before, I would look at the ratings every week. I'm a numbers guy. I would look at the ratings every week. And I would see country names that I've never heard of. And 10 people in this little dinky country somewhere were listening to my show. So yeah, I do attribute those, the climb. But it took a couple of years to go from 0 or 1, my brother, to 40,000. So yeah, I attribute that 100% to Voice America's reach around the globe, but also what that's done for me now in this new venue is now I know how to do it. Now I know how to do the broadcast every week. And it's up to me, and this is where, it gets a little, tough sometimes. It's up to me to continue to get the word out there, because there are all those 40,000 people that used to listen are still out there. And I sometimes sit here, like today, I was thinking, maybe if I didn't change the name, they would have found me sooner. But if they're looking for, the show and they go New York Real Estate Podcast, whatever, I'm going to pop up anyway. So they're going to find me.
It's the Vince Rocco that's going to pop up. The good mornings and all that other stuff is nonsense. You have such a catchy, powerful name that's yeah, there you go. So now when you think about growing your audience, or for someone who has a small podcast and they're asking you these questions, what are the go-to things? What are the top 1 or 2 things that you're employing or that they should do to grow your audience?
That's a very good question. I think that the best thing we can all do is to just stay focused, stay on message, stay top of mind. What I try to do all the time is get this show out there on social media. There's your technology, John. As much as I can, talk it up. When people say to me, hey, I listened to your show, I really liked it, I say to them, because now I have to do things differently. Go back to the show if you haven't already and rate it, because I'm being told now by my new producer that every time someone rates your show on Apple Podcast, it does something out there in the universe where it pops up in more people's search engines or whatever than it ever did. I don't know these things. Voice America did all of that. So, what I've learned is just to stay focused, stay top of mind, to really pay attention to. I I need to deliver a great show. You know, there's a difference between good and, I think somebody asked me yesterday, or maybe John in the prep material, the difference between good and great. I'm not satisfied unless every show is great, and every show is not great. Okay, they're just not. They're good. Some of them are great. Last week's show was great ×2. That is because of the chemistry in the room. The reason I liked the studio was we all just dove in there. You know, we have this little thing we do before the show starts, and the show turned out to be great. But my goal every week is to, from a writing perspective, a booking perspective, and then a conversation perspective, boy, is that a lot, make a great show. And we don't hold back. You know, we talk about everything there is to talk about. You know, somebody said to me a year or two ago, listen, so is the reason you're not coming back to doing the show anymore is because, you know, you ran out of things to talk about? I said, are you kidding me? New York City real estate, just New York City people, and you think I have nothing to talk about? For real? No, I just needed a break. I just needed a rest. There's always something to talk about, and there's always something to improve. Always.
Where do you go from
focused.
here?
Television.
I mean, seriously, you started the show saying that video is next. How do you transition from an emphasis on writing and a conversation, a live conversation in the studio, which is then edited, to a video show? What kind of changes do you have to make?
Stay tuned. That's the quick answer. The long answer is, you know, I didn't know anything about audio broadcasting before I started that. I had to learn. You know, by the way, people think they could just sit in front of a mic and just, you know, go on and on and on. You can't. There's an art to it, just like there's more of an art to doing television or video like you guys do. So there's a lot more prep, I think. There's a lot more, you know, I'm not going to be wearing this on television. Or maybe I will. I don't know.
But you could.
You know, I don't know. It's all unknown territory. So I don't really even have an answer for that. I right now, I'm going back on what I learned from an audio perspective, and hopefully that'll translate. There's nothing in the immediate works, but there's a lot of stuff being talked about or generated. I mean, the producer I have now is like all over this program. He tells me it's the best, you know, podcast that he works with, and I'm like, thank you. Where do we go from? I said the same thing. So where do I go from here? And he's the one who brought it up. I don't know.
All right.
Let's see.
So be brutally honest. Rate this show. Good, great, could have been better. Too much Engel, not enough Roberto. I know.
Your show. Oh,
Yeah.
no. No. This is great. I think, listen, you're bringing awareness of something to your audience every week like I am. So again, you are the one who has to say, for me, it's a great experience. I had fun with this, but you have to sit there and say, so when the lights go off, did I pull that off? I walk out of the studio every week saying, was that good? Was that not good? Maybe I said too much. Maybe I didn't say enough. I should have grilled that one a little better. We're all our biggest critics. I had fun. I think, you know, you touched on topics that are relevant. Look, if you want to be and stay in front of people, you got to be relevant and talk about what people want to hear. And no one's really ever, well, once before on my old show, they surprised me. They made me sit on the other side of the table. One of my panel members got behind the mic. I said, what are you doing? He said, we're going to turn the tables on you and talk to you. I like, but we don't have anything prepared. They like, don't worry about it. We do. They shocked me and surprised me. So being able to do this side of the deal is great. I don't ever get to do that. So it's enjoyable for me.
Well, you did just fine. I think this was very good, very engaging. There was no, as you say, dead air. No dead air.
I don't believe in dead air. Remember.
All right, Roberto, thoughts?
My dear friend, Vince, I've known you for so long, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I love hearing your voice and actually seeing your face this time. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for supporting us, and we definitely support you. So thank you.
Listen, I'll just end with this. You know, I always say success is where preparation and opportunity meet. Be prepared and go out and find that opportunity, whether we're looking for the next deal or we're looking for the next podcast. Just do it. Just do it.
And where do I find your show if I want to watch it live? What time? Where?
Apple, it's not live. It goes to we tape on Tuesday mornings and it drops on Wednesday mornings. So any Wednesday morning, go to find a new show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. I mean, it's all over. And Good Morning New York, the same thing. Any app that you find, any podcast, you'll find 300 plus shows of Good Morning New York.
Excellent. Awesome. 300 plus shows. I'm going to go listen to them all. Thank you. Thank you, Vince. This was great.
Vincent, Johnny.
Thank you, Roberto.
Peace out, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Next week on the show, we have ethics and hidden greed. Our guest is a Yale professor who's been consulting with McKinsey and Bloomberg and a number of companies, but he's written the book at Yale on ethics and hidden greed, and we've got him on the show next week, and I will be broadcasting from Iceland. Yes, wow. Iceland. So I'm going to Iceland. I'm bringing the studio with me, and I have no idea what kind of a show it's going to be from Iceland, but we'll give it a shot. Ethics.
Now I'm jealous.
Travel safely.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank
Iceland
you.
is great. You would love it.
I can't wait.
You would love it. It's the best.
I'm going to be broadcasting from top of the mountain, literally.
No, go to Blue Lagoon and lay down and broadcast.
Is that what you want? You want me in a swimsuit?
Oh, whatever.
Anything for ratings, Lisa. Anything for ratings.
That's right. You would
can't
look
wear your
great.
bow tie if you got a swimsuit on.
You won't see a swimsuit. It's all white. It's like milk. It doesn't show. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy it.
That's exactly what I look like in a swimsuit, all white.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.